There are so many diets out there. I'm sure you've heard of many of them. Keto, Atkins, low carb this, high protein that, and then there's supplements that you can take. But are any of them really going to work? Stay tuned and listen to two obesity specialists give us the real deal on these diets. I have two physicians here with me, Dr. Melody Covington, who's the CEO and medical director of Abundant Health and Vitality Associates, which is a medical weight loss clinic especially tailored to personalized medical weight management and nutrition. And then we have Dr. Michael G. Knight, who is a physician and assistant professor of medicine at the George Washington University School of Medicine and Health Sciences, where he also practices in both internal medicine, which is adult medicine, and obesity medicine. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
So, you guys are experts in your field. You do this every day. I'm going to name some popular diets, and I just want you guys to give me your thoughts. Does it work? Is it bogus? Maybe it works. Don't waste your money. Let's start with my personal favorite. That's the keto diet. And we'll kind of lump that together with other low carb diets. But keto in particular is a low carb diet, high protein, high fats, aimed at healthy fats that aims to also avoid certain inflammatory foods and ultimately is supposed to lead to fat loss, but usually there is weight loss that comes with it. So, who wants to go first?
When we think about keto, I like the way you grouped it. It's a part of this lower carb, high protein, high fat approach. We've seen this before. So there's been South Beach, there's been Atkins. And so keto is the newest flavor of this low carb and higher protein, high fat approach. When we think about keto, one of the things that's different is that it's very, very, very low carb. All right. So one thing we have to understand is just how many carbs there actually are out there. We think about sweet things, but we're also talking about starches. We're talking about grains. We're talking about fruits. All of those things are carbohydrates. So, for what I have seen, we know that lower carb approaches are effective for many people in helping them to lose weight, particularly because such a large percentage of individuals with excess weight have a sugar control problem. So, whether that's diabetes, prediabetes, or what we call insulin resistance, which is often comes before prediabetes. And that's when you are resistant to insulin, which is a hormone that helps you to process carbohydrates, which is we find in our food. So I found that keto can be effective. The challenge I see with keto is sustainability. It is very difficult for many of us who, especially if we're grown up with an American diet, to eat very, very, very small amounts of carbohydrates. Now, if you're able to sustain it, great. It's important to talk to your doctor, particularly if you have certain medical conditions like kidney disease. But otherwise, I think at least in the short term, it can be effective for weight loss. My concern is long term sustainability because when you get off the keto and start eating carbs again, you will most likely regain that weight.
I would definitely agree. The keto diet can definitely be effective. Our concern in our clinic is also sustainability. Can you stick to less than 20 grams of carbs a day? Is that realistic for you? Does it turn you into a tailspin where you're binging or having issues with cravings, things like that? What we like about the keto diet, though, is that over time, some people are not as hungry. So that can be a huge plus. Some of the issues with keto to think about, though, is how high does your protein have to be and how high does your fat have to be? You don't have to overdo those two macronutrients. So that's one place where we do see mistakes where people are doing an extraordinarily high fat diet, they're doing bulletproof coffee, or they're just really doing excess fat and increasing in calories where they really don't need to. And also, it doesn't have to be an ultra high protein diet. It can be moderate protein or something realistic.
Got it. And do you think, I mean, I hear both of you guys talking about sustainability, but is it something where, again, it's January, folks just want to kind of kickstart their healthy eating patterns. So maybe when they, maybe they can do keto for 3 to 6 months and then they're not going to go back and binge per se. Maybe they'll eat healthier, but just not as strict. Do you find that it could help kickstart people sometimes?
It can. Where the concern is going in and out of ketosis is actually not very effective. Lowering the carbs, there's a weight loss component to that with water retention. So when you see people kind of toe that line, they can have large fluctuations in their diet. So it can definitely be used to kickstart, but changing the carb amount can also lead to some weight rebound.
Right. And I think the biggest part there is that the ketosis portion, or it's a phase when our body is burning fats for energy instead of depending on carbohydrates, can lead to decreased appetite. So that's where we'll see patients, they'll say, I'm in ketosis, I don't feel hungry. However, once you start having carbs, you're no longer in ketosis, you don't have that effect. So it can help kickstart, but I think what it should do is get you comfortable in eating a lower carb dietary approach. Once you start getting used to having less carbs in your diet, it's easier to find a balance that's sustainable for you. Again, we're not talking about putting water in a bucket. We're putting water in a bucket with a hole at the bottom. Just because you've lost the 20 pounds in January and February does not mean those 20 pounds are going to stay off. As soon as you end the diet, your body is actively trying to regain that weight. Even stronger, your appetite is stronger, the cravings are stronger, your metabolism has dropped. So it's very difficult just to keep the 20 pounds off. So let's not think about it as I'm just going to do this, lose 20 pounds, and then I'm good for the rest of 2021. Actually, you need to have a process so that not only can you keep those 20 pounds off, which is a task in and of itself, but achieve additional weight loss.
There's two components with keto that are more behavioral that help with being successful as well. These patients are forced to plan because they have to stay below a certain carb amount. So we know that when people plan meals, they prepare, if they look at menus before they go to a restaurant, if they make a plan for what they're going to eat, we know that patients are going to be more successful with that. So that's something you can use in any diet. And the other component that can be key on the behavioral end is tracking. So a lot of people, when they start with keto, because they're not sure exactly where their carbs are, like Dr. Knight started with, you have to know what is the carbohydrate class and what foods are included in that. So there's a large knowledge component where they're tracking and putting foods in and determining how many grams of carbs are in those foods, and tracking requires accountability. So those are two things that are not necessarily related specifically to food, but that are also tied to success for the keto diet.
Next, we have the Whole30 diet. This is a 30-day diet focused on whole plant-based foods that have never been processed or refined. So basically, fresh fruits, vegetables, eggs, nuts, seeds, seafood. And then the other part of it is you have to avoid sugars, alcohol, grains, beans, soy, and dairy. Whole30 also says they're not really focused on weight loss, even though a lot of the folks that do it do lose weight. They're more focusing on health. So tell me what you think about this one.
I like the Whole30. And I probably have a little bit of a bias because we do food sensitivity testing in my clinic, and we do that to look for inflammatory foods. So when I think of Whole30, it's similar to, well, not similar, it is an elimination diet or detox. You're getting rid of alcohol and those foods that you mentioned, inflammatory foods, dairy, to kind of calm down any responses. And people may see weight loss from that, or some water release from that. So I like that it's short. I like that it allows people to reset. It allows people to kind of clean up their diet. The one caveat is if you go back to all of the things you eliminated, you may not be able to retain any weight that you lost. But for the elimination portion of it, I actually do like the Whole30.
And I like the fact that it forces you to avoid processed food. I mean, we have had numerous studies that have shown that processed food is not only linked to weight gain, it's linked to cardiovascular disease, which includes heart attack, stroke, diabetes, high blood pressure, all of those things that we hear about, right? So Whole30 just really encourages you to choose more of your simpler, more direct foods that don't have that level of process. And even some of the processed meat we know can have challenges. One thing I will say is understanding that Whole30 does not necessarily mean you're going to lose a lot of weight. So there may be individuals who have a health benefit. You might see your blood pressure come down. You may see your sugar, your diabetes or sugar control be optimized, but you may not lose a lot of weight. It really depends on your starting points. If you are someone who was eating fast food multiple times a day, drinking a lot of juice, drinking a lot of alcohol, you almost surely will lose weight. But if you were someone that had a pretty good diet, but you wanted to try something new, that's not necessarily going to lead to a large amount of weight loss. And again, I would encourage folks that if you do Whole30 to not just throw everything you've learned away and go back to what you were doing before. Again, it's all about sustainability. It's almost like you're playing tug of war. So you've been tugging for 30 days, you let go of that rope. The weight's coming back, folks. So that's something to keep in mind.
So let's talk for a second about this processed food thing. So it sounds like you're saying not necessarily calorie content or carb content, but just simply eating processed foods can lead to excess weight.
Well, I think when we think about processed foods, most processed foods are low in nutritional quality, high in carbohydrate, and high glycemic index carbohydrate. What does that mean? All carbohydrates are not the same. There are some carbohydrates that cause our sugar levels to go up very quickly, and there's some that take a much longer time for you to break it down. That's what we call the glycemic index. So a food that is high glycemic index is going to turn into a simple sugar glucose very quickly in your body, and you're going to have a spike in sugar levels. When we think about processed foods, so think about your favorite snack cake, something you can get from the corner store, something you're going to get, at your favorite fast food restaurant. Your body's going to process that very quickly to glucose, and we know that that is linked to weight gain. So just by decreasing your intake of processed foods in general, the likelihood is that you are going to decrease carbohydrate intake, specifically high glycemic index carbohydrates, as well as getting the health benefit of avoiding some of the processed meats that we know can not only have cardiovascular risk, but also cancer risk.
Processed foods and chemicals are also more addictive. So people may consume more of them. They may have larger portions. They may eat more frequently. They may have some issues with satiety. So also the amount of food intake and caloric intake is changed with those processed foods.
Okay, so now we're going to move to the Mediterranean diet. So the foundation of this are vegetables and fruits. Again, I'm noticing a pattern here. Fruits and vegetables, herbs, nuts, beans, and whole grains. Plus, you can have on the Mediterranean diet moderate amounts of dairy, poultry, eggs, and seafood. But usually they recommend avoiding red meat. Let's talk about this one.
So the Mediterranean diet, a lot of the data that we have on this is about cardiovascular benefit. So a lot of patients who have a history of heart disease, high blood pressure, high cholesterol specifically, that going on the Mediterranean diet can really lead to great outcomes. Now, when it comes to weight loss, you can lose weight, but again, it's not, I don't primarily look at it as something I'm going to do just to lose weight. It is something that I'm going to do to think about decreasing my cholesterol levels, decreasing my blood pressure levels, and really getting a heart healthy diet. Now, for many patients, again, if you're starting from the point where you're eating a lot of processed foods, you're eating a lot of heavy carbohydrates, eating a lot of fast food, and transitioning to a Mediterranean diet will likely lead to weight loss. But again, for many patients who are thinking about a quick diet, I'm not expecting you to lose 30 pounds in a month on the Mediterranean diet. And you shouldn't expect that either.
I like the Mediterranean diet for the same reasons. That's something that we will recommend for our cardiovascular patients, people with a history of heart disease, stroke, those types of things. I like that it can be fulfilling because it does not restrict protein or meat. It just reduces the amount of red meat. So we want those patients to eat more seafood and things like that. And they are not restricted from oil either. So I like that they have some healthy fat and they're getting protein. But I agree with Dr. Knight. That's one that we often recommend for our heart healthy our patients.
You brought up the red meat aspect. Does that have a big implication on just health, or is it health as well as weight gain or weight loss?
I would say that it's more health wise. If
Okay.
we go back to the keto diet, which we started with, the saturated fats or those red meats, protein, those foods have not been demonstrated to necessarily cause weight gain. Actually, patients will lose weight with those foods because they tend to be higher in protein. So patients are a lot more satiated. They eat less frequently. They're a lot more fulfilled. However, where we have concerns with saturated fats is cholesterol and certain types of cancers, especially colon cancer. So it's more the health aspect than the weight loss. We know that patients can lose weight with those foods in their diet, unless they are large salt retainers.
So the next one on my list is the paleo diet. And that diet focuses on lean meats, fish, fruit, veggies, nuts, and seeds. Basically, foods that back in the day could be obtained by hunting and gathering. And again, avoiding processed foods, sugars, and that includes even artificial sweeteners.
I like the paleo diet for similar reasons that we've discussed. There's no processed foods there. There's whole foods. We're not completely restricting food groups. There's carbohydrate, there's protein. It can be fulfilling and it can be healthy. It's a natural diet. So for those reasons, I think that it definitely has some great health benefits. And for some patients, maybe even weight loss.
I agree. I like the concept. It's a lot of great and body friendly foods, and that we can see a lot of benefit when it comes to health. But again, like Dr. Covington outlined, I may not primarily be looking for large amounts of weight loss. I think this is actually good for patients who want to do weight stabilization. So maybe you've lost a lot of weight and now you're just trying to look at something. I do find it to be more sustainable out of many of these diets, because there is some flexibility on the types of food that you can eat, and it's pretty varied or diverse in your food options. So I do like it for the sustainability piece.
So now let's talk about some of the more brand name programs. So Nutrisystem, Jenny Craig, Ideal
Mhm.
Protein, these are all companies that basically make your food for you. Most of them will say breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. Get them from us. I know the first two, Nutrisystem and Jenny Craig, will mail them to you now, like flash frozen. And then Ideal Protein, I think you have to actually go into the clinic to purchase it. But it's all this concept of we'll figure out what your plan is based on your body, and then we'll give you the food. What do you guys think about that approach?
Yeah, so these programs have been shown to lead to weight loss. Okay, if you have a professional cook, a nutritionist that is preparing your meals and shipping it to you, you will lose weight. The question is, how long will you continue to pay for this? That's a challenge that I see for many of my patients. Not only how long you continue to pay for it, because cost is an issue. So you're buying multiple prepared meals, as well as snacks. Most of these programs, you have to eat 6 or 7 times a day. The second piece is your food preferences. So, if you're someone who likes to cook a lot, or you may have cultural meals that you enjoy, whether it's the Caribbean, whether it's from Latin America, whether it's from the South, Midwest. And so if you get prepared meals, it may not be any kind of food that you're used to eating. Now, it's going to be healthy for you. You'll lose some weight, but if you don't like the food, you're not going to stick to it. And so I always, start my conversations with patients in just understanding what they're currently eating and their food preferences before making changes. So I think if you're looking for a complete reset, you want to just wipe the slate clean, then you can consider it. But I would encourage you that if you do a program like this, that you are actually learning from the meals that are being prepared for you so that you can start replicating it. And I usually will wean the patients off of those programs by having them prepare similar meals at home, and help them to understand those concepts. Because the reality is, maybe some folks, but most of my patients, they're not going to be paying for a meal delivery flash frozen service for very long.
No, that's a great idea too, about getting them to kind of replicate the meals and see how they're making them.
Hmm.
That's a great idea. And the other thing, just to add before I jump to Dr. Covington, is you ha- I always think about the patients who they're paying for this meal service, but they still have to feed the other people in their house.
Right.
So how do you manage that? Is everybody eating Nutrisystem?
Hmm.
Or are you eating Nutrisystem and then you're cooking those cultural foods for everybody in your house so they don't, storm out and
Hmm.
protest? So go ahead,
Hmm.
Dr. Covington.
So I agree. So this is basically meal replacement, right? So high protein meals that are low in carbohydrate, they're calorie and portion controlled. We use them in our practices for weight management because it does actually have data to support that patients on
Hmm.
average will lose about 40 pounds in 12 weeks. Is it sustainable? That's up to the patient and the plan, but does it work? It has been shown to work, not just for our bariatric patients, but also PCOS and diabetic patients as well, or patients who need to get to surgery quickly if they need a knee replacement and things like that. So it's something that's dear to my heart because we use it quite a bit, but I'm very honest with patients that it's not completely natural. There are some potentially artificial sweeteners to make the food taste good. There's going to be some isolates for protein, so it's not the cleanest food, but it also depends on what your goals are. I think the strength of these programs is that it's convenient. So the food is already there. There is an investment required. So these programs usually will retail somewhere between $300 to $400 a month. So the patient is invested, and then there's a lot of structure, but accountability. Because if you're doing an ideal protein, which is different from Jenny Craig and Nutrisystem, because that's a physician supervised program, typically you're going in to see a dietitian or you're going in to see a weight specialist. So these programs definitely work, but I totally echo Dr. Knight is that you have to be thinking ahead. This can be my jump start. This can be learning portion control, learning meal timing,
Hmm.
but what am I going to do after my 12 weeks so that I can do this at home on my own?
So Les, this is a good segue to, I think the company that we all think about the most when we hear about popular diets, Weight Watchers, which I think has now shortened their name or something because they rebranded. But basically, they match you with a food plan as well. And you're not necessarily eating their food, you're eating your food, but you're still counting points. And then you can actually eat carbs on Weight Watchers. So, what do you guys think about that?
Weight Watchers has pluses and minuses. So we can't argue with the fact that there's millions of people who have lost weight with this program. It requires accountability and tracking. So I think that's one of the basis. They have a support system if you're going to meetings or if you're meeting up with a coach. And it's basically a calorie counting type of system. They have that calculation that takes calories and subtracts fiber and things like that. One of the negatives, in my opinion, is it sustainable? If you can't find the points when you're at a restaurant, do you know how much you can eat or how much you've eaten? So is it realistic in different type of environments? Is it sustainable long term? And are you really learning anything nutritionally about your food? So in my clinic, one of the things that we teach patients is how to read a nutrition label and how to understand carbs, protein, and fat, and those types of things. When you're using a Weight Watchers calculation, you can't look at a banana and know that it's about 30 grams of carbs because it's a point, right? It's 5 points, it's whatever. So that's one of the drawbacks for Weight Watchers is I don't think that patients really learn about nutrition in their own environments if they don't have that calculation to use. But we've seen people lose weight with it, and I think if there's a structured plan and support, whether a program is something that you like or not, it can still work for some patients.
Hmm. I would agree. We've almost every one of my patients who's come in have been on WW, formerly known as Weight Watchers, before. I think one of the things with Weight Watchers is that The point system, it helps you at least start thinking about what am I eating and what impact will that have on my weight. You know, it's not just calories, they also do some of the points based on carbohydrate content. Now, some of the challenges I've seen, particularly with the newer version of WW, is that, you know, your fruits are free, so there's no points for that. And for some
Mhm.
individuals who do have problems with processing sugar, such as diabetes or prediabetes, some fruits can be actually very high in sugar. And if they're having large amounts of that, fruit smoothies, for example, they taste great, but the amount of fruits that you're ingesting in one of those large fruit smoothies is more than you would probably have in a couple of days. So you want to think about the sugar intake. So I would say it's a good start point. I think another thing that a lot of patients like is the group setting. I know with COVID, we're not really in groups, but they still have some virtual groups that they're doing. And so sometimes it's just the group support as well as accountability partners that some WW programs have that is actually a large portion of the benefit of weight loss. But that's one of the things. If you're someone who likes the group support, who likes accountability partners in a structured program, then WW may be beneficial for you.
So the next that I have and the last are, I'm grouping them together, but basically these companies that have supplements that are meant to boost metabolism. They also do a little meal replacement shakes. They do skinny teas, things like that. Is there anything behind those?
Yeah, so when I think about that approach, right, I think that it mixes some things that do have some evidence as well as some things that don't have a lot of strong evidence.
Okay.
So when it comes to meal replacements, I have found them to be effective for many patients, particularly those who are trying to increase their protein intake, limit their carbohydrates. They may not be as hungry 3 times a day, so they have other options of replacing a meal. So some of those shakes are actually really effective. Do I want to on a shake every day, every meal? No. Because why? Because that's not sustainable. We remember there was a very famous talk show host in the 90s who was on a liquid diet, and that did not last. So we want to avoid something like that. Some of the supplements as well, you know, we don't have any supplements that are guaranteed to burn fat. Okay. If we did, whoever found it would be on the Forbes list, right? Because everybody would be trying to
Exactly.
get it. And even though we have medications that prove for weight loss, we don't have a magic pill. So if someone's trying to sell you a supplement, I say, you know, if it's a vitamin, I like my patients to get their vitamins and minerals from their food. You know, when you think about whole foods approaches, you should be able to get most of your vitamins and minerals from your foods unless you have really specific dietary restrictions. If you want to take a supplement, you know, I don't think there's strong evidence against many of them, but I also don't think there's strong evidence for them. So would I spend $50+ on a supplement? Absolutely not. If it's something that is a vitamin, sure, why not? But I think we have to be realistic of what we expect with these supplements.
I agree. And I'll say this about tea. You don't need a fancy tea to suppress your appetite or feel full. Tea has natural properties that help with satiety, especially if it's hot, if you're drinking 8 to 16 ounces or how much tea that you choose to drink. And it's a natural appetite suppressant if you're doing the higher caffeine types of teas like black or green tea.
Hmm.
So I'm not knocking anyone's hustle, but you don't need these designer teas or expensive teas or these fancy herbal teas to get a satiety type of or suppression. I'm sorry, appetite suppressing effect. You can do that with regular black tea from the grocery store.
Also, remember that some of these teas are really just making you run to the bathroom. They're helping you clean out. That's why you're losing weight. I mean, let's be real about this. There's certain teas that allow us to eliminate, and also teas that allow us to eliminate fluid that kind of have what we call diuretic, meaning that increases the water filtration and the water release in your urine. So when you think about teas that have that, yes, you'll see the scale go down, but it's really because you're eliminating a lot of that food through the gut any kind of laxative is going to give that to you. We have to be careful about that, because what else is coming being eliminated? Sometimes the nutrients that you are not able to absorb because you're eliminating so quickly. So yes, you won't feel as bloated. Maybe you'll fit into, something for the night, but tomorrow morning it's going to be back. So we have to really think about what is in some of these teas and supplements that are being offered.
Or you could end up dehydrated too,
Right.
on top of that. All right. So here's the big question. So it's January. Folks are trying to figure it out. They've been locked up with COVID for months. Where do they start? I mean, we already just went through almost 10 programs. How do they know what to do?
Well, I was going to say I am just as overwhelmed and don't know where to start, just like most patients, because we're inundated with so much information, sometimes conflicting information, and it's hard to know what to start. I think the first place to think about is, what are your goals? Are you trying to lose weight? Are you trying to be healthy? Are you trying to eliminate some type of inflammatory food? Because different diets are going to serve different purposes. If you have a primary care doctor, of course, I have a bias because I am a physician, but have a conversation with the physician first so that we can make sure that we're doing something that is safe based on your medical history, and some of the medications that you're on. If you're on a bunch of insulin and you do a keto diet, that can be very dangerous. And you need someone who's going to be adjusting the insulin. So in January, that's a great time to go visit your doctor, get weighed, and talk about your concerns. They may decide to refer you to a dietitian. They may decide to refer you to someone like me or Dr. Mike, who specializes in obesity medicine. But have a conversation with the doctor to make sure that you're doing something safe. In my opinion, it's never a good idea to have an extraordinarily high carb diet. So for the most part, if you are, sticking to something reasonable, in our clinic is less than 100 grams of carbs daily, that's a good start. And then, of course, we like the vegetable class and protein, but that protein can be from vegetables. It can be from lean meats. It does not have to be, saturated fats or red meats.
Yeah, I would agree. Where I start is understanding where you are. So you got to do we call a current state analysis. So where are you today? What are you eating now? And then start following those concepts. We've talked about a number of dietary strategies or diets, and almost all of them are low carb, high protein. There's different levels of how much, but that's the general way that the field has gone in the last, I would say, 5+ years. Last 5 to 10 years, almost everything has gone there. In the 90s, we saw a lot more low fat and low calories, even though they were high in carbohydrates. Do you remember some of those? Well, you still see those little 100-calorie packs that are full of sugar. That you might as well have the calories for that amount of sugar. So you want to understand where you are currently, and then start moving towards a sustainable dietary approach that is going to include a lower carbohydrate, a higher protein approach for the most part. The reason I say sustainable, look at them. If my patient comes in and says, I want to do paleo, I want to do Whole30, I want to do a low carb, high protein diet, I'm going to say, well, which one can you see yourself being on for all year, for 12 months? Which one is it going to be? And they will say, oh, well, this sounds good for a couple of weeks, so I don't know if I can keep doing this. Well, then that's not what you need to be doing. I would much rather you lose weight in a steady way and keep that weight off. Now, a lot of patients come in to see me, they want to lose 20 pounds in 4 weeks. You can lose 20 pounds in 4 weeks. You're probably not going to be happy about it because your diet's going to be extremely restricted, and it's very likely that you're going to regain the weight. But what I can't tell you is you may lose 20 pounds in 3 months, but you'll keep the weight off. And that's what they want to see. So you didn't gain that weight overnight, you're not going to lose it overnight. We got to think about sustainability. It is a lifestyle change. If you want to start on this journey of weight management, weight loss, then it is a lifetime commitment, and thinking about what can I see myself doing almost indefinitely. What food preferences do I have? Who is cooking in the house? You know, are they going to cook me a meal and the rest of the family a meal? Am I going to have to cook myself a meal and the rest of the family? And also think about accountability partners. I think that's a huge part of find a lot of people that is effective, whether it's a professional like a doctor or a nutritionist or a friend that's going on this journey with you. Find someone to help you along the way and keep you accountable.
Absolutely. I see a lot of couples like on social media, right? They're
Hmm.
doing it together. So that makes sense because you have the person in your house. They're not eating Oreos all day while you're trying
Right.
to watch your carb intake. Any last take home points about this?
The one last thing I would want to say is the most effective diet is the one that you can stick to. I mean, that's the fact of the matter. We have done studies where we have looked at a number of diets, South Beach, Weight Watchers, Ornish, Atkins, and the patients, all in every group, patients lost weight. But what was most indicative of weight loss was their ability to stick to the program. So if we looked at everyone and only looked at the people who stuck with the program for the entire time, those people, a large percentage in every one of those diets, lost weight. So again, the most effective diet, you're going to pick and peel. This one has a little bit more carb. This one has a little bit more protein. This one has a little bit more fat. At the end of the day, it's what are you going to be able to sustain? And oftentimes, if that's the one that's a little closer to what you like and what you're used to. And so that's what you should do. And also think about seeing an obesity medicine specialist. So there are physicians who are board certified in obesity medicine, and having a customized approach is going to be the most effective way to have sustainable weight loss.
I'd agree with that. Personalize your nutrition based on what your specific needs are. You don't have to follow everyone else's diet. There's probably something really specific for you, which is why there are so many different diets and they can work for everyone.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, you guys, for being here. And thank you all for watching. Please feel free to subscribe to the Black America's Health channel so you can see future episodes as they come out and hit the bell so that you're notified. Have a good night, everyone.